My name is Brian Friedland, and welcome to another episode of Inside the GSC. Today I'm interviewing the Gulf South Conference's Assistant Commissioner for Compliance and Special Events, Andrea Anderson. Andrea started at the GSC in 2002 and has been working in her current role as Assistant Commissioner since July of 2023. She will take us through how she got to the GSC, what it means to be a woman working in sports, and more. All right, so we have another fun episode of Inside the GSC today. Today, I'm joined by Andrea Anderson, the Assistant Commissioner for Compliance and Special Events here at the Gulf South Conference. Andrea, thank you so much for joining me today in conjunction with National Women and Girls in Sports Day that is coming up. So
thank you, Brian. I'm excited to be here.
let's get going into this one. So I was just wondering if you could share with all of us just a little bit about your role as Assistant Commissioner at the conference and just how you got to this point and with your time in the league. Because I know you've been here since, I believe, 2002. So it's been a little bit.
I've been here for a pretty long time. I started out with the league in a part-time role, just sort of helping out around the office because I have a background in athletics somewhat. It's kind of a complicated story. My parents were both teachers. My dad coached football all my life, which in Alabama is the be-all and end-all. That's what we did. So I know a lot about athletics, and he was also athletic director at Hoover High School during their big run all those years ago. So I've been around it all my life. And when the position became available, they needed some help around the GSC office. And I did actually some writing because my degree is in English literature. So I came on doing some sports writing, which was fun. And then things sort of over the years just sort of morphed into they needed a full-time compliance person. Our previous commissioner had been handling compliance all the time. And when they said that that was not permissible anymore as one of the things that's changed over the years in compliance, it had to be a designated full-time person. So that role kind of came to me, and it's been an interesting learning curve to say the least. So it's definitely the nuts and bolts of athletics. So.
For sure. And I was wondering too, like you touched on it where it's kind of like, you were at Auburn, you're an English major. So did you always envision working in sports in the first place, and especially compliance too, which is like that does translate from English, but it's a very nitty gritty segment of the industry.
It's having a degree in English is rather helpful when you have to slog through a lot of the legislation. That makes it a little easier to read sometimes, but it's different. And no, I did not have an idea of going into the sports industry. My first major, before I changed to become an English major, I was a journalism major. So I did that at Auburn for 2 years, I guess, and I had a job. I was a stringer for one of the papers here in Alabama, in Huntsville. I had a good job, just did not love it because I had to go, I was, what was I, 19? So I had to interview people, and I wasn't super comfortable with that. And back then, I'm of a certain age. Back then you could just get a college degree. So I just majored in English and said, we'll figure this out. And I'm really so happy that I ended up in athletics because it's adjacent to everything in my life that I've ever been involved with. Because I also have 2 sons that played all the sports. My dad coached. I grew up I grew up at a gym or a football field. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's literally what I did. I was in the band and stuff in high school. So that was another part of it. So I understand all the different moving parts, and it's just been really, it's a different world, and it's funny. It's an interesting world because everybody thinks they understand it because everybody watches sports, or most people watch sports, and they think they understand the business, and it's just so different once you get on the inside of it. But it's the Division II thing is great. It's such a great opportunity for a lot of kids, and it's nice. So long-winded, weird answer.
No, it's great. It's great. So now we'll just dig into a little bit deeper for what you do here for the conference. And so a lot of people, when they think of compliance, they genuinely think of rules and violations. Like it's kind of like it's viewed as this police officer type role. So how accurate is that? And can you share the importance of the role, both at the conference and institution level, just being in compliance?
100%. It's interesting that you bring up the word police officer because it is a little bit like that, but if you'll think about what police officers' motto normally is to protect and serve. And that's literally the role of a compliance officer. On a campus, at a conference office, it's a little bit different. The campus compliance officers, it's a thankless job, and people get upset with them a lot of times because they feel like they are trying to police them, and they're not necessarily trying to police them; they're trying to protect them. Because if you all of your program, your athletics program, and this is just a philosophy that I've developed since being here for this many years, and I'll say it until the cows come home. You can have all the perfect things in your program and it's wonderful and you win and everybody's happy and all this stuff. If your compliance is not in order, it doesn't matter. Because if you have to vacate wins and stuff. So that's really the role, is to try to keep everything as it should be so that everybody stays on the right track. And it's a protection feature. Now, the conference office is a little different. That's really that's a campus compliance officer's role. At the conference office, it's a little different. We do police things and keep up with things, but we also serve as a resource. It's a hard time to be a resource right now with everything that's going on in the NCAA. So a lot of times my answers when people have questions is, I have no idea, let me dig. So that's kind of where we are right now on that.
To be fair, at least, so for context, we have staff meetings every week, and I feel like I'm always enlightened by something going on when we get around to Andrea talking and saying what she's dealing with for the week. There's always something. But I think you hit on a really big point, especially in that last part where you're talking about change. There's a lot of change going on in college sports right now. You have transfer portal, you have eligibility, you have NIL. There's all sorts of things going on. Obviously, you've been here at the Gulf South Conference for a while, as we touched on, and I'm just wondering, like, what changes have you seen during that time, and how has compliance changed overall because of that?
Great question. Compliance, I have been here a long time. And in that time, we have seen the advent of the computer to do everything. I mean, I've been around long enough that we used to get faxes of everything. If someone sent us stuff, they did not email it. They literally, everything came in faxes. I used to call it the paper blizzard because everybody faxed in every NLI, every financial aid agreement, every financial, everything. Everything was faxed in. It was crazy. So one way that it's changed tremendously over the years is through technology. And I actually did that probably 6 or 7 years ago. I took my department completely paperless. So I have a really nice desk and file cabinets and stuff, but they're all empty now. So everything is right here in my little laptop. It's fascinating. It's a really different way. And in that vein, something that we've done as things have changed, and this is one way that I really appreciate the leadership from Matt on this, from Matt Wilson, our commissioner, but also from our athletics administrators and their understanding of the changing needs of stuff. Because compliance, there's a lot of technology that's available, and we were able as a league this year to require and then work to require that all of our campuses have compliance software. And then we were able to work a deal with a company so that everyone has a package. And we're really hopeful that that's going to, as things progress and as the landscape changes within the NCAA, it's going to be a really good way to keep up with different things, and we can source things together so that it's sort of all in one place. Because right now it feels like a lot of stuff is in a lot of different platforms and a lot of different questions and answers, and it's hard to know what's up. So that's one thing that we've done. The technology aspect of it is tremendously different. The NCAA has done a lot of things over the years to sort of ease the burden on compliance officers. That was a big deal about 10 years ago. They went through and did a lot of stuff like that. So it's interesting. The NCAA is a little bit it's a large organization, so it's more of a reactive body than a proactive body. So right. We've been reacting over the years, and I'm lucky enough to be in a place in a league that is forward thinking enough to be able to keep up with that. So we're lucky on that aspect. That's good.
For sure. And then, so I know you're a part of the Division II Conference Compliance Group. So I was wondering if you could explain to anybody who may not know necessarily what that is and why you felt that it was important to get involved with that.
That group, that goes back to what I was talking about with the conference compliance officer role.
Right.
It's a really different role than your campuses. Your campuses, they're busy. They've got people in and out. They see their student athletes. They interact. They go to games. They do all this stuff. The conference office role can be a little bit lonely, and you can feel a little bit like you're the one out there trying to figure all this out. That group, the D2 CCACA is what we call it. It's that group, we use each other as a resource. We have a call once a month. We meet in person twice a year. Um, and we literally just ask each other questions. Hey, has anybody had this? Because like I said, right now with the NCAA, things are changing so much. And also we're having a hard time getting answers from the NCAA sometimes now, simply because they don't have the answers. Because a lot of this stuff is going to rely on what the courts say. So it's nice to have a group like that, a group of incredibly intelligent, experienced people that you can just shoot off an email or a text to ask for how they've handled a certain situation.
Oh, absolutely. And I was wondering too, just following up to that, have there been any important takeaways that you've had from these people that you've kind of sat there and been like, okay, maybe I can emulate this and see what I can do at the league office level and not just on the campus level?
hmm And that's one of my favorite ways to use that group as a resource, and I tell them every time I ask something, I ask for a resource on some all academic work that we're doing, some research stuff, and I needed to know what other leagues were doing in that group. I just can go to them and say, hey guys, what are your policies on this? So rather than reinventing the wheel, since we're not the same, but we are similar enough that we can share our resources and all of that stuff. So that's been really helpful, to have a large group, and it's a collaborative group. That's something that's so important right now, with everybody feeling sort of adrift and a little bit lost right now. It's good to have, and that's something that we do at our for our league personally. The way that, because I use the CCA so much, and they're such a good resource. That's sort of our goal with our the conference compliance group. I host a compliance call for that group every 2 weeks, and we send out a short agenda. Some days there's nothing on the agenda. Sometimes there's a lot on the agenda. But that conversation, that call, that Zoom generally turns into a resource sharing conversation, and people will come and say, hey, I have this that I can't figure out, and it's a great way, because I'm telling you, the only way we're getting through all this is to lean on each other right now. So
Right.
it's a good time. It's both good and bad. We gotta help each other. So it's an interesting
Right.
time to be in athletics. We'll just go with that.
Right. Especially when it feels like every year there's just something new coming up. Like next year, there could be some whole other problem we're not even foreseeing right now. So it's
Always.
just
We've
a lot of
learned.
change.
Well, and Brian, that's something that coming out of the pandemic, we started the every 2 week call during the pandemic when campuses were closed and there was so much chaos. And that's probably the best thing that came out of the pandemic, is the foundation that we were able to build underneath our compliance group to keep them in touch with each other and for them to be able to use each other as resources. So that's been helpful.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And then so for anybody listening right now, this isn't the first time you're going to hear this term, but I was wondering, we're gonna be talking about SWAs a lot in this interview. And so I was wondering, what is that position that is so commonly held at universities now? And has this role become increasingly more important, especially considering the amount of change we were just talking about that's happening every single year?
Every year. Um, SWA is probably one of the most misunderstood terms in college athletics, in my opinion. An SWA it's not a position; it is a designation. It's Senior Woman Administrator, and if you'll notice, I said Senior Woman Administrator, not Senior Women's Administrator. A lot of people, just like I said, like I alluded to earlier, the general public thinks they understand athletics, but they really don't. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so it's just one of the funny ways about it. But Senior Woman Administrator is the title given to a woman within your athletic department who has the most seniority. So
Okay.
an administrative person. At the Division II level, that's been different over the years. You have some that come to it through coaching. Some come through it through strict administrative experience. We also host calls for the Gulf South Conference Senior Woman Administrator group. We do that once a month. That's something new that we're doing this year to actually meet once a month. And we're trying to use that as a resource as well. The reason I bring that up and talk about it is that there is some overlap. A lot of compliance directors are their campus's designated senior woman administrator, but several of them aren't, because we have some men, believe it or not. But there are a lot of coaches, there are a lot of just straight up administrators, compliance people. I think we've had an athletic trainer before that was a senior woman administrator. It's a lot of different roles on campus. However, that is the nature of Division II. Everybody wears a lot of hats, right? A lot of hats.
Right.
So, and it's really hard to define the senior woman administrator hat, so to speak. And you ask how it has changed over the years. It's interesting because that's something that we're talking about as a group, is how to, that, like I mentioned a minute ago, we've started a monthly call for our senior woman administrator group, and we have ideas about things that we want to work on and speak into and different projects and stuff. But it's interesting to try to sort of collate all that down because we do fulfill so many roles on our campuses. So a lot of times the senior woman administrator is someone who has a lot of different responsibilities. And so we can identify a lot of problems, but then it's kind of hard to pick just one to try to address.
Right.
So we're coming back to do that kind of stuff all the time. As far as the role in the future, I don't know. Things are changing. It's an interesting prospect because the advantage of it is, senior woman administrator is a designation that was given by the NCAA. I don't know exactly when it started. I apologize. I should have looked that up earlier because I was thinking about this. It's really hard historically for women to get a seat at the table. Historically, not necessarily now. It's still difficult now, but in the past, sports was very much male dominated. Okay. And as they wanted to give women opportunities and stuff, the designation of SWA became very important because they are the senior woman administrator in a lot of leagues. Our league has always, our previous commissioner set up 30 years ago. I don't even know when it was, but when he came on, he set up so that the Gulf South Conference has a place at the table in our administrator meetings for senior woman administrators. There are most other leagues don't do that. A lot of other leagues don't do that. I don't know. I shouldn't say most. When I first started a long time ago, not many did it. I'm not sure what the numbers are now, but within the Gulf South Conference, women have a voice, which is important. It's being in the room for those meetings is important because you understand the background and it helps you understand why decisions were made that happened. And it just helps women to fulfill their leadership positions on their campuses.
Right. And yeah, just shifting gears a little bit, but still tying back into this, because obviously it is getting more important to make sure that women are getting the right opportunities within sport. And we're doing this obviously a week before National Girls and Women's in Sports Day. And we're also celebrating an anniversary for Title IX this year. So I believe it's the 50th anniversary. So that's
so crazy.
That's a big landmark. So how important is it to you to be able to celebrate moments like this? Because, 100 years ago, it definitely wasn't the same as it is now.
It's hugely important. And it's funny because people get tired of hearing about it, but it wasn't long ago that women did not have these opportunities that they have now. So as the opportunities have expanded, for women, it is important to celebrate that. I can't believe it's the 50th year. Number one, that's crazy that it has, it feels like the blink of an eye, but it also is like, it's only been 50 years that women have been important, or, that they decided to make space for us. Cause that's what Title IX did. It made space for women. And look at all the girls that are involved in sports now. Women's sports is huge. It's amazing. It thrills my soul to see it do so well. Sports is, athletics has its problems, but athletics is wonderful overall. It's so good for people, and it can just provide so many opportunities and such great growth potential in the right situation. It's just it's so important that it's been, I can't believe it's been 50 years. It feels like yesterday that we selected our representatives for the 40th anniversary of of that. It was just it's been a quick time. Let's just put it that way. So
Time always flies. Yeah, I had a professor a while back. He always said the one thing you can't get back is time, and that's
you can't.
it's so true because it constantly is always moving, constantly evolving, much like women's sports and opportunity for women in sports has. So, kind of tying into to what you were talking about before, how have you seen the role of women in sports evolve since you first got to the Gulf South
Oh,
Conference?
wow. You know, like I said, that's one place that we don't have very many um, women athletic directors. We never have, and that's something that I would like to see change within our league and well within all of athletics, to be honest with you. But it's changed really just because there are so many more opportunities for women now. So many, um, and as we expand and provide more sports, I mean, flag football, you know, how exciting is that? I'm sorry. I just think that is just the coolest thing that everybody's all of a sudden doing this big push to start playing flag football for women's sports. And I mean, what a blast, you know,
Right.
it's just, but so lots of opportunities. We sponsor so many, um, women's sports. And like I said, it's a great place for them to mature and learn about the world outside of their own family unit and learn that structure. I'm just always impressed with these kids and their drive, so to speak. Now, these athletes, they wow, they are hard workers. It's interesting. All the things that we request of them as athletes, and then they also are full-time students and people too. So pretty amazing.
Right. And then I know you touched on seeing more women in athletic director roles moving forward. But are there any other changes for women in sports that you'd like to see, let's just say the next 5 years or so that come to mind?
As far as opportunities to for women to learn and continue their educational stuff with as far as athletics administration, the NCAA does a fabulous job of that. They have lots and lots of opportunities for mentorship and leadership stuff, and I hope that that continues because as I feel like the NCAA is a place that as a woman you have some better advantages than maybe in another industry, if that makes
For sure.
sense.
Yeah, that does. That does. And then I know obviously you have your handprints all over the GSC SAC and helping to run that. And for anybody who doesn't know, that's the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And so you kind of help to shape that next generation of people in sports and also women in sports. So as a woman working in sports, how do you view your role now as helping to shape that next generation of women in the industry?
Okay. I took over SAC a couple of years ago, Student Athlete Advisory Committee. That is one of my favorite things that I have taken in many years. I immensely enjoy being part of that group. That too is something I sound like I'm a Zoom crazy person, but we also have a monthly call with our SAC leadership to keep them, for them to also be able to use each other as resources and their ideas and stuff. And just to keep them updated on stuff because, like we were talking about, things in the NCAA are a little chaotic right now. So it's nice. We try to keep that bridge open of communication with our student athletes because they are our best resource. I mean, they're why we're here, right? I mean, we're here to serve them. That's our role, is to serve them and serve our schools. So that group, it's been a lot of fun. And women in that, I don't particularly mentor directly to a women as women in there, but I do try to mentor some of the leadership and stuff as they move along and help them with their different focus. I try to take a little bit of a hands off with our SAC group. I'm very involved with it, but I also want it to be theirs.
Right.
Okay. So that's one way, and that's something that we do. I mean, we bring in. I haven't done anything really women specific within the SAC this year, just because it is a mixed group. But we have a meeting every year. Have an in-person retreat every year. Probably going to hit on some stuff with that this summer. That's coming up in July. It's time to start planning. Actually, I've already started planning on that, but that's always that's a fun event. So
For sure, for sure. And I feel like too with the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, I feel like it's such a good opportunity just because, as we've touched on so many times already, everything is constantly changing and you just constantly need to make sure these student athletes are heard and being able to at least have a say in what's going on because they can't just be passengers in their story. You know, it's their story
100%.
after all. So.
That's a great way to put it. I love that. Very good.
But anyways, so now we'll segue to some fun rapid fire questions. I always like to end my interviews with these. So we'll start off. Are you a cat person or a dog person?
I am a dog person. I have two insane dogs. I have one is a half border collie and she's nuts. And the other is a 100% purebred golden doodle that we adopted a couple of years ago. So we have one. A woman at the park asked me a few weeks ago, she was like, what's the story with the designer and the mutt? And I was like, funny. So dogs. Dogs.
And then are you a coffee or a tea person?
I'm definitely a coffee person, but I love tea as well. I'm a sweet iced tea. I'm Southern, in case you didn't know. No, I need that sweet tea. But no, I'm a coffee person, coffee junkie.
Got. And then if you had to go to a coffee place, this is a quick rapid fire follow up. If you had to go to a coffee place, which one are you choosing in Birmingham?
Oh gosh, probably Red Cap.
Okay,
I make
and
my
then
coffee
obviously,
at home. I literally have I buy whole bean coffee. I have a French press. I have a pour over. I have a regular. I mean, I have way too much coffee stuff. I make most of my coffee at home. So that's why I'm not good at answering that question. I'm like, anyway.
Hey, sometimes that's the best kind of it, right?
It is. I mean, I've got a cappuccino maker for heaven's sake.
And then, so obviously, you've gotten to see a lot of sports during your time, not only at the Gulf South Conference, but just, growing up with your dad being a football coach. So what is your favorite sport to watch if you had to choose?
Gosh. I'm going to say football just because
Okay.
my dad coached football all my life. I was a senior at Auburn the first time that Auburn and Alabama game, the Iron Bowl, was played on campus at Auburn. Was my senior year in 1989. It was really fun. We won.
It's always better when you win. So.
Always. But it was the first time it had ever been played there. Historically, prior to that, it had been played in Birmingham as a neutral site, which is not a neutral site at all. So it had been played at Legion Field in Birmingham. I'd been to that game multiple times, but then my senior year, it actually was in Auburn for the very first time. It was very exciting. Big stuff.
Right. And then we'll wrap up with this question. This is a 3-layer question.
Oh,
So
gosh.
I know you've been to a few concerts during your life, and so I was wondering, what's the first concert you ever saw in person, the most recent one, and then the best one you've seen?
Ooh. No, that's a really good question. It's a great layered question. First concert I saw, I grew up in Jemison, Alabama, and we used to have this weird little place called the Central Alabama Music Park back in the 80s. And I swear I saw the Little River Band there a few times. Maybe the Oak Ridge Boys, back then. My first real legit concert was Hall & Oates in Birmingham, and Tina Turner opened for them. And we were like, who is this woman? It was right before What's Love Got to Do with It came out. Like, we were like, who is this old lady? Hilarious now to think about it. Most recent concert I've been to would be Green Day. Saw Green Day in Nashville a few months ago. That was really, really fun. Best concert ever? That's really hard. Again, when I was in college, we had tickets to see the Rolling Stones here in Birmingham at Legion Field. Yeah, we were driving and the car broke down on the way, so we left the car on the side of the road and hitchhiked with some high school kids that were coming through and made it to our concert. um, that was a great concert. And I guess other than that, Jack White, he's really great. Anyway, people are going to be like, who is she talking about? Anyway, so
Hey,
pretty random.
I knew most of those people. I'm a big Hall and Oates guy, so I
Okay, cool.
appreciated that reference in there.
Seriously, it's bizarre. I mean, it was Hall and Oates. I think I won the tickets on like a radio station, like on one of those call-in things back in the day. I was like 15. My parents drove us and dropped us off. Isn't that funny? It was fun. It was great.
That's awesome.
So, Hall and Oates, gotta
Well,
love it.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for joining me today. I greatly appreciated getting to know more about compliance SWAs, which is not a position, it's a designation, and
Job.
understanding the layers that are involved with this segment of the sports industry. So thank you once again for joining me. This was great.
Brian, thank you for having me. Thank you for being interested in this topic because women are important and kind of overlooked sometimes. And just thanks for doing this. It was fun. Had a great time.
I hope you all enjoyed our interview today. Remember to like, share, and subscribe wherever content can be found. Stay tuned for what we have in store next time on Inside the GSC.